What resources does the league provide for you guys as players to kind of help you try to filter through some of the hate and negative things that come through on social media?
I think that, honestly, I don't know what our league does to help with that. If they really do anything, you can put out statements as much as you want, but at the end of the day, you're in an entertainment business. That's when mental toughness comes in. If you're going to live by praise, you're going to die by the hate, and so I think that's on the individual person to have mental toughness. Some people can deal with it, some people can't, and I think you can see the ones who can, and unfortunately there are some who can't, and it's not beneficial to them, but you can't control what other people say or what other people do. All you can do is control yourself, how you treat people, speak up, and support people who, maybe don't have a voice or don't have the courage to do that, but it's one of those things. You're in the entertainment business and you have to expect it. Oh yeah, she just came up, and I respect her for coming up in person. I think a lot of people hide behind screens and love that type of thing. She had stories about her point of view, and I had stories about my point of view, and we left with love and respect, and I think that's what it's all about. I think that there's so much good going on in the WNBA. I think that basketball is being played at the highest level it's ever been. I think our team in specific, we are breaking history right now with the amount of points that we're scoring on back-to-back games. I think the Minnesota game, there's just so much distraction. I think the WNBA media, all we ever do is cover everything except basketball. And it's what are we doing? There's so much. You can talk about other things. I think those are great stories. I think it shows fans, who people are outside of the court. But I also think we got to keep the main thing. And I think when it comes to the Minnesota game, I think there's so much distraction. But the matchup between Miles and Kelsey was phenomenal. Our team, that game in particular was a great game. And so I think that there's a lot to be said, and I'm going to let people just do the speaking for themselves. But for me, I want to get back to basketball. It's always been about basketball. That interview happened in February when I was asked a question. And so for me, I just want to, make sure that it stays, the focus stays where it should, because people are playing at such a high level. We have probably 3 MVPs that could be MVPs on our team specifically. And so that's why I want to do that. No, I was asked a question, and that's simply what it was. I just wasn't making a statement to make a statement. And so I was trying to clear the air, and I did that back in February. And so it is what it is.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. So there have been more people weighing into Sophie Cunningham and what she said about protecting girls in sports, more people weighing into men competing in women's sports and not being afraid to speak the truth. And there's also people weighing in and saying that this is, transphobic and it's bigotry and, we should welcome everybody.
I think it's trans rights right now is our new battle. That's what I think I was saying, that the battles have changed. Oh, yes. Our intention's been the same, but now the environment has changed. We see trans people's rights being, stripped away from them. There's a lot of discourse around trans athletes and what they can compete in. I would welcome a trans athlete on my team or against my team anytime. I don't think it's a problem in the world. It's just another way to kind of attack trans people. We've seen players like Lasia Clarendon who stepped into that forefront and have been brave enough and courageous enough to kind of step up. So I guess that's the next battle that we have to fight as athletes.
Female tennis players have been asked what they think about the sex testing, and most of it is actually very positive towards it.
I think it's really important to keep the fairness in our tour, and it's obvious that biologically, right, the men are way stronger than women, so I feel like it would be not really fair for the woman to compete against biological men. So I believe it took them a little while to make this decision, and I support it.
Yeah. My opinion is I think the WTA just wanted to update their policy based on what they've seen from other, sporting organizations. And so far, at least from my point of view, I don't really have any pushback on it. I think I haven't heard, even being on council, no players have really mentioned or said anything about it. We had to watch a video and do a whole thing to kind of a rollout of the education and why we're doing it. And it wasn't just kind of laid on us you have to do this. There was a lot of education and stuff in the background of all the stuff the players have had to do to learn about it.
There are those who want to stress that they're not, against anybody, they're not bigots, but they believe that women's sports should be fair, should remain fair and safe for all female athletes. But of course, they have to give a disclaimer because they don't want their words to be misconstrued. So the first person to speak up in defense of Sophie Cunningham was Vice President J.D. Vance.
Have you been following Sophie Cunningham and what's happened? I know you're a big sports fan, the WNBA. She's been targeted, elbowed for her beliefs. I mean, she basically believes girls' sports should be protected. I was a college athlete, and this is an issue near and dear to my heart and so many women across the country.
Yeah, of course.
Your reaction to what's happened to her?
Well, I just think, look, sometimes when you're courageous in this country, some of the worst people in the world try to attack you. What I would tell Sophie and anybody else is keep speaking your mind. You actually are inspiring a dozen people for every person that criticizes you. And we cannot take our country back. We cannot save the United States of America unless you have people of courage who are speaking their mind. The thing about courage, Laura, is it's contagious. When you see one person, even if they have the mob come after them, one person speak their mind in a courageous and honest way, it inspires a lot of people to do the same. So I would tell Sophie, keep going.
So I really felt for her when she was speaking about how the league doesn't really provide that much assistance when it comes to dealing with online trolls, backlash, hateful comments online. We've seen what she deals with publicly, the booing. Obviously, that's normal at basketball games, but many have said that it's excessive and it's particularly targeted towards her.
And I will tell you, Sean, every time Sophie was on the court, every time she was subbed in, every time she threw up the ball, she was booed by the entire stadium virtually, bar me and Jen Say, who is sitting next to me, owner of XXXY Athletics. They're trying to do to her what they've done to people like me, what they do to people like you. They call you reprehensible, totally inaccurate things like racist. And I think that's at best. And they use violence against you at worst.
So can you imagine what she is dealing with behind the scenes? That's what I'm very curious about. I actually think, based on how woke these people are, how woke the organization is, I don't think it's good. I think she's dealing with a lot of things behind the scenes that many of us can't even fathom. I hope I'm wrong. And another person to speak up in her defense is Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith has been doing the rounds recently. He recently apologized to Kyrie Irving because Kyrie Irving refused to get the vaccine back in the day. Stephen A. Smith said that he should be cut. He really went in on him. And now he's turned around and apologized in light of Fauci being exposed even more for the fraud that he is. And now he's speaking out in defense of women's sport. Remember, Stephen A. Smith actually criticized Riley Gaines for calling out Simone Biles. Simone Biles likened Riley to a man and basically implied that she was a sore loser and that she should leave the trans women alone. And Stephen A. Smith weighed into it and actually criticized Riley Gaines. But to his credit, he did invite Riley onto his show. And when Riley was speaking, I saw in real time this man get a realization.
Does it get more perverted than being in a shower, which is typical for a swimming locker room, especially you're in the chlorine, you get out, you're in the pool 5 times a day, you rinse off. Does it get more perverted than standing in the shower, totally undressed, when a 6'4" man approaches you, stands in the shower head next to you, undresses himself, fully naked, fully intact, and watches you shower? That's the context I was drawing. And to me, that is sexual abuse. What me and my teammates had to go through was certainly sexual abuse.
And the sporting bodies, the NCAA, coaches and people who organize this sport are telling her that she has to be okay with that. What could he say to that? So fast forward to Sophie Cunningham speaking up for women and girls. Stephen A. Smith is letting it be known in no uncertain terms that he's not for that.
This is not about being anti-anything. This is about being pro-girls, pro-females, pro-women, pro-ladies. You can't be a male, born a male, transitioning to female, and think that you should have the right to compete with women. Not in basketball, not in football, not in boxing, not in the UFC. Hell, not even in tennis. It's an aberration when you find somebody like a Serena Williams serving 120 miles, 25 miles an hour. That's ordinary for Jokic or Jokovic. That's ordinary for Sinner. That's ordinary for Alcaraz. That was ordinary for Sampras, Agassi, and all of these guys. We got to stop this. We got to stop acting like somebody that's speaking up on behalf of girls, like a Sophie Cunningham, like a Riley Gaines, are scourges of the earth. You are Cheryl Reeve, the head coach of the Minnesota Lynx. That is an irresponsible thing to do. You are a coach for a female basketball team. Do you not think that the females are being screwed over if they have to compete against an individual born as a male? What are you talking about? Nobody said you can't transition from male to female. The issue here is competing against the women. That's what Sophie Cunningham was talking about. That's what Riley Gaines is talking about. How are you, Coach Cheryl Reeve, and you could condone that? And then you're going to come out with a T-shirt. No regard for the WNBA. No regard for the sponsors that may be put off by that. No regard for the bottom line that might be affected because of a position that she has taken that you know is going to be politicized because that's what you did. No regard for that whatsoever. How is that okay? How?
Preach, Stephen, preach. I mean, it's so lovely to hear that. It really is. Sophie needs that sort of support from public figures in sport because unfortunately she is the lone voice within the WNBA. And like he said, you are demonizing women and girls for saying that they don't want to compete against men and boys. We are talking about male athletes. For the longest time, women weren't even allowed to say that and acknowledge that. And that's why they introduced certain terminology to convince people that we're talking about a different type of woman here. Just like you say, black women, tall women, short women, trans women. I'll throw that in there as if that's the same thing. No, we're talking about men. And the sooner people can accept that, the sooner we can have an honest conversation. But these people are not even willing to accept that. And one of these people who is very loud and very wrong about this topic is Megan Rapinoe. It is usually the loudest people that are the most wrong about this topic, except for Stephen A. Smith. He's just loud, but he is certainly 100% correct on this matter. Megan Rapinoe, on the other hand, is one of the loudest and one of the most ignorant when it comes to this topic, one of the most clueless when it comes to this topic. But she can't see it. And now she has the audacity to call out Sophie Cunningham for taking a picture with Riley Gaines.
I want to address the controversy that is happening right now around trans women in sports. As you know, I've talked about this a lot and will continue to keep talking about this. I don't know Sophie, so I can only project what I see about her beliefs based on her actions. And seeing a picture of her with Riley Gaines after the game told me everything I need to know about what's happening. Riley Gaines has made it her life's mission to exclude trans people from public life. She's directly tied to the Heritage Foundation, the authors of Project 2025 and now 2026, who have now published a report that suggests that they want to repeal Title IX, the very piece of legislation that allowed athletes like Sophie and myself to compete in sports. Sophie has claimed both to love trans people and support Title IX. And this is where I think the accountability with having a major platform is extremely important. You can hear it even in the language being used that the root of trans exclusion is to protect young girls from men. To be clear, I would love to have that conversation, and it's much needed in this country. But it frames the conversation as if we're protecting young girls from men being in WNBA locker rooms. Not happening. It villainizes trans girls as if they're somehow magically older than their peers or are men, when in reality, they are also young girls. These laws are excluding kids from playing youth sports. If we want to have a conversation around elite sports, there are effective policies that have been in place for many years that no one noticed because they worked. So if anybody is taking these talking points as legit or believing they're protecting young girls in sports, I just have to ask, are you serious?
No, Megan, are you serious? Did you catch that delusion that she is displaying before our very eyes? This is why it's impossible to have an honest conversation with this woman and people who think like her.
In reality, they are also young girls.
Did you catch that? So until she's able to get back into reality, if she was ever there to begin with, we cannot have an honest conversation. She refuses to acknowledge that we're talking about boys. She refuses to acknowledge that we're talking about men. Everybody knows that women do not want men in their changing rooms or locker rooms. Women do not want men in their showers. Everybody knows this. But because she's subscribed to certain labels, she thinks that we need to now see these men as women. Nothing has changed with Riley Gaines. From day one, she has spoken up about having to share a locker room with Leah Thomas, a shower with Leah Thomas, having to compete against Leah Thomas, having her trophy taken away and given to Leah Thomas. And all throughout this time, Leah Thomas started out being a man and is still a man. Leah Thomas, formerly Will Thomas, who competed in the men's division. See, Megan, you're not fooling anybody. People are not buying it anymore. The majority of people in this country have decided to embrace reality. We're not talking about young girls. We're talking about boys. And everybody knows that girls don't want to compete against boys. Parents don't want their girls competing against boys. And they certainly don't want their daughters, girls, females, in the locker room with boys, who are male, by the way, and can never be female. So she's not even worth addressing because she can't even have an honest conversation and acknowledge that we're talking about boys. She's incapable of doing that as it stands. She's still pushing her ideology. So absolutely, boys need to be excluded from girls' sports. Men need to be excluded from women's sports. I don't care what label they have. That doesn't change their biology. And when it comes to sports, people compete with their bodies, which are either male or female. Again, identity should never override that. You can call yourself whatever you want, but when it comes to actually competing in sports, you better compete in the correct category. And if you're not for that, then you're not for fairness in sports. You're not for protecting women in sports and protecting girls. Your wokeness means more to you than that. And your virtue signaling means more to you than that. Riley Gaines is all about Title IX, and that has never changed. But of course, she's painting her own narrative like USA Today tried to do. The same USA Today that likened Caitlin Clark to the woman who accused Emmett Till. So yes, until she's able to acknowledge that we're talking about men and boys, don't even give her any attention. I've given her far too much already. People are not falling for it anymore. This is the same woman who was likening black women to men. Apparently, according to Megan, we're the first ones who are going to be targeted. And thankfully, black people are making it clear that they're not playing those games anymore.
The issue here is competing against the women. That's what Sophie Cunningham was talking about.
But he's right, and I can't believe we're back having this conversation.
Well, the reason why
I thought that was already like done.
So it can't. Well, yeah, this is like another wave of it, but it started because Sophie Cunningham, she was asked about trans women playing in women's sports, and she said that she didn't believe that it was fair that girls should have to compete against.
She's right.
Women,
That's true.
right? But
That's
now,
true.
so it started everybody arguing again.
It's
so,
the truth.
What he didn't say anything wrong. Like, remember the swimmer? Remember that the male swimmer? He came in like 300th place when he was swimming on the men's team. He transitioned to the women's team and became number one.
Killed everybody. But seriously, why can't a trans woman go to the NBA?
Yeah, that'd actually be big.
Right,
That'd actually
but
be, a lot
I
of
do
strong
believe
faces were on there too.
Trans women should be in the NBA.
Be like, you know how they like the logos like this? It might should be like this.
Like throw the neck back.
So Jess Hilarious is basically saying what we've all been saying. Nobody is excluded from sports just because you're saying that people should compete in the correct category. Jess was saying that these trans women, they can compete in the NBA if they want to. In other words, they can compete with the men. And I doubt they'll get to the NBA, to be honest. But because of their biological advantage, more than likely they can compete in the WNBA. And therein lies the problem. We know that men compete in their own category because they do have a physical advantage over females. And that doesn't change just because one of them identifies as a woman suddenly, or because they're taking hormones. It really doesn't change, because men and women are more than just hormones. So I agree with Jess, and I believe most of the country agrees with Jess. The men can compete with the men, no matter how they identify. And if you don't make it to the NBA, well, guess what? Most of us don't make it to that level of sport. It's okay. You can still participate in the level that you are competent in, like everybody else has to. They don't get special privileges because they have a label. They don't get to trample upon the rights of women and girls because they have a label that you have put upon them. So I do think the fact that Sophie took a photo with Riley Gaines has a lot to do with why she's being targeted, because we have the bias mainstream media loves to put a spin on things.
The WTA recently said it's going to give gender tests to the players on tour. What's your impression of that? What do you feel about it? And what did the WTA do to prepare you guys for what's to come on that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as, I guess, with that, I mean, I know it's been something that's been talked about a while, but I've talked to a couple other players, and a lot of them didn't find out until the press release. So I do think that's something that could have been more transparent amongst like players across the tour. As far as that, I mean, I understand the reasoning behind it. I do think that this kind of conversation has created a lot of animosity towards the trans community, which I'm not really a big fan of, but I also understand the need to, I guess, the biological difference and the need to protect that and preserve that. So I think it's a conversation that is very nuanced, and it creates causes, or I need to have a nuanced answer. So yes, I guess kind of agree with trying to protect the fairness in women's sports, but I also do not like the attack that it is creating people who don't really care but just want to use this as a reason to attack the trans community. So I'm not really a big fan of that either. So I don't really know how to answer really this question in a way that people aren't going to spin it. But as far as where I stand, I definitely support the trans community, but I also support the need of creating fairness in sport too.
Now, these people are under pressure because whatever they say can easily be misconstrued. But I don't really see how what she said was much different from what Sophie Cunningham said. What Sophie Cunningham said was using certain terminology like biological women, biological men, and, there's room for everybody, but I just believe, sports should remain fair. I don't see that much difference in what Sophie said and what Coco said. So I kind of believe, these media outlets, the way they spin it, they're spinning it according to the narrative that they want to put out there. And with Sophie taking a photo with Riley Gaines, well, that's all they need to demonize her and to take what she said and label it transphobic. With Sophie, prior to taking a photo with Riley Gaines, being praised by conservatives, aligning herself with the UFC, who is very much aligned with Trump. Trump loves going to watch those matches and that kind of thing. So I think that's enough for people. When it suits them, they're saying that someone is fair and balanced. But when that person doesn't come in the package that they like, well, that person is just MAGA. That person is just a bigot. That person attacks the trans community. So that's something to be aware of. I think people are being manipulated. Brandy Cruz said, Coco isn't saying anything different than Sophie did, but the media is definitely treating her differently. Why? So if you have any thoughts on that, let me know in the comments. But what I will say is saying that women's sports should be protected is not an automatic attack on the trans community or on anybody. And if people are coming forward and praising Sophie for taking a stand for women and girls, praising Irina Sabalenka for taking a stand in tennis. That doesn't mean that they're attacking the trans community. And if people want to lash out, for example, the likes of Megan Rapinoe, people are going to respond. Again, that's not an attack on anybody. That is simply a response and a rebuttal of the lies that have been put out there. So if these people are not willing to have an honest conversation, don't even bother. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video. And a huge thanks to all of those who've hyped my videos. It is greatly appreciated.